that British newspapers won't publish these kind of cartoons, doesn't that mean the extremists are winning?
Well, no, they're not. They're not. The whole problem with this dynamic is that with each of these terrorist attacks, and don't get me wrong, the people who are responsible for killing these cartoonists are evil, in my view, and that's the word I apply to them. They are evil murderers. So it's no question of going soft on them, and indeed, of course, they've been murdered themselves now, so that's most of them.
Except aren't you allowing the Islamic belief in the Prophet Muhammad, not depicting the Prophet Muhammad, aren't you allowing that to trump other people's beliefs?
You always have to ask, with something that purports to be satire, who's it attacking? Are they people who are in a position of power? And if it's attacking people in a position of power, is it giving comfort to people who are powerless and who are assaulted in some sense by those powerful people? This is not the dynamic with Islamist terrorists. They are not in power in our society, and it is not comforting the people who look at these cartoons, whether in Charlie Hebdo or in newspapers here. They don't feel better about themselves or about life to see Islamist terrorists mocked, or the beliefs of Muslims in general mocked. Why does it make anybody feel better?
Well,
you know, if I were a cartoonist, the people I would be attacking are the security state, and I think it's hugely significant that the French state is now funding a 1 million print run of Charlie Hebdo. So if they're kind of situationist radicals, then what are they doing being in bed with the French government?
So I'm very sad that journalists in UK do not support us, that journalists in UK betray what journalism is about by thinking that people cannot be grown enough to decide if a drawing is offending or not, because you're not even showing it. Is this, which is completely crazy, that in UK you cannot show a simple drawing as that.
So we've
with Mohammed
here at Sky News, we've chosen not to show that cover, so we would appreciate Caroline not showing that. I do apologise for any of our viewers who may have been offended by
Well, I mean, it's a very simplistic way to look at things, frankly. I think this idea that you can take revenge on terrorists by reoffending, as it were, and, you know, deeply...
They're not taking revenge. They're just saying, even though we lost all our colleagues in this barbarous act, we're not going to be cowed by you. We're going to carry on doing what we do.
But surely the best way to move from such horror is not to fall into more, you know, inciting violence and offending people, but to move towards reconciliation.
In what way does that cover incite violence?
Well, in many ways. I mean, the very definition of incitement to racial hatred is when you cause harm or offence to a person or a group of people, and which leads to violence.
It's a cartoon of someone who's meant to be Muhammad. It's a rather endearing little cartoon. He's got a tear coming out of his eye. He says, "You're forgiven," and Jesuischarlie. In what way is that racist or offensive?
I mean, with all due respect, Andrew, it's not for a white, middle-class, entitled, comfortable man like you sitting in, you know, the cosy environs of the BBC.
Just answer the question.
Answer
the question instead of being offensive.
What is offensive to those communities or not?
So you can be offensive, but they can't be.
No. What I'm saying is you have to look at it from the receiving end, people who are on the other end.
So I'm asking you, in what way is it offensive?
It is offensive because they see it as an insult to one of the most revered persons, figures in their faith.
I'm outraged. No, I'm outraged by Nabila. I really am. 12 people are murdered. And the magazine, the people who have worked with those murdered people produce a magazine the following week, I think, of extraordinary magnanimity. I mean, to have all is forgiven, to have the Prophet saying, Jesuischarlie, to imagine that, you know, not only have 12 people been murdered in Paris, but 130 school kids have been massacred in Pakistan, 200 school kids have been seized in northern Nigeria, all in the name of the Prophet, which I imagine, I love to believe the Prophet would be deeply offended by. For these people to produce a magazine that says all is forgiven, I think is such a wonderful act of magnanimity. And for people now to go around saying that this is offensive, seems to me to be, in a way, trying to open up a second front.
But
I mean, we are all
Michael,
appalled at that these people were murdered in Paris.
And so I am.
And I think
so are the
really,
overwhelming
and I
majority
think
of
really,
Muslims.
what would be very suitable would be a period of silence.
What, the
Not for
blank
people to
page
go
would be
around-
more suitable than reproducing a cartoon, for
not
example.
for people to go around saying they're offended, for people either to be silent or to continue to talk about the horror of people being
But
murdered
nobody's
in the name of
disputing
the Prophet.
the level of
If
if it is going to
What?
cause violence, which it did.
No, it does not cause violence.
It did.
That's an outrageous
Not in
thing.
Paris, but also in the Middle East.
No, that is
a lot of
outrageous.
people died in the Middle East when those cartoons were
people
printed.
did-
Are you going to ignore the loss of lives?
Nobody.
Shall we?
Nobody.
Is it not a great reason to move on to a more
Hold on, let Diane say
is
something.
ignoring the loss of life, and I probably have more sympathy for your view than some of the other people here, but nonetheless, to say that those cartoons, in some sense, legitimise slaughtering all those people in
No,
cold
I'm
blood,
not saying
that's
that.
going too far.
I
That
wonder
is
why you're
what
putting
you're
that
saying.
into my mouth.
No,
I've
you
not
said
said that.
you said it caused it.
Exactly,
It led
and
to
that's
violence.
wrong.
It led to violence. There's no denying the fact that those radical Islamists felt that their God had been blasphemed against,
hold
and
on.
they set out to murder
Hold on,
them.
you
Is that
say-
why they,
direct
is
connection
that why they
between the
shot the two
blasphemy
policemen
and
on the pavement? Is that why they
Why
shot
did
the
they
two
shoot a
policemen on
Muslim
the pavement?
policeman?
I mean, to put it in a very unfashionable way, he was collateral damage, and he was representative of a force of authority.
You really must stop making this link
Diane.
between the cartoons and the slaughter, as if one
not making this
legitimises
link,
the
Diane.
other.
I don't think a cartoon of the Prophet is a racial stereotyping anyway.
But it is for
But
a
hold on,
religious
you-
stereotype for
but-
people at the other
Excuse me,
end.
you need to let someone else speak.
But when in the name of the Prophet, which is exactly what happened in Paris and what is happening all over the world, when in the name of the Prophet people are being slaughtered, you have to allow the Prophet to speak back in the eyes of other people. And that is what these cartoons are doing. They're giving a different...
You have to,
the
you have
Prophet
to put
that
that
is portrayed...
cover in the context of the tradition of Charlie Hebdo, which depicts Muslims in the most wicked
And
and
also
cruel
Jews
manner,
and
as
other
terrorists,
races.
as fanatics,
Actually,
Yep,
as,
cover, I thought,
and
quite
indeed black people
respectful.
as monkeys.
No,
Would it
I-
be comfortable to see that in the British press, Diane?
I am-
Please answer this question.
But that would be that would run itself foul of the anti-race hatred laws.
And so it should be the
and
same
you-
for
yes, but
whipping up
you would
racial
have, I
hatred
would
against
suggest,
communities.
but you would have a hard job saying that Charlie Hebdo cover ran foul
But
of
it
racial
led to all
hatred
sort of
laws. Do you think it
stigmatization
does?
against-
Do you
But
think it
there
does?
is a direct link
Let me
between what
ask
Charlie
you.
Hebdo publishes and the perception of Muslims within French society. They are being
do you think
seen
the
as
Prophet...
Anybody
the
read
alien
Charlie
enemy
Hebdo?
within.
Do you think the Prophet would have condoned these killings?
This is not the issue. We
No,
don't-
please
no,
please
tell
answer
us.
the
No,
It is
no,
the
tell
issue.
us.
This is not a
It is the
theological
issue.
question, Michael.
no,
It is,
this is a
because
very
the
pragmatic
cartoon
one.
shows...
Tell us.
This
the
is a
cartoon
pragmatic
shows the
one.
Prophet saying, Je suis Charlie.
But
The
Michael,
cartoon shows
you
the Prophet saying, all is forgiven.
But you're making
Do
a
you think
simple
the Prophet...
link between...
But please answer the question. Would the,
I'm answering it,
would the
but
Prophet have condoned...
We'll have to
the
answer it
killings?
quickly because we're
He
running out
would
of
have
time.
been very
It is
forgiving and he would have
often-
risen above it with
is
dignity.
often
That's what he would have done.
This is what a
non-devout
number of Muslims
people
have said.
who
That's
go
what he would
about
have done.
and perpetrate these
All right.
actions.
Would the Prophet have condoned the killings?
We're going to have to leave it there. Not a lot of humour tonight, I'm afraid. But thanks to both of you for being with us.